Welcome to the AFL's 2018 season reviews, where we'll be looking back at each club's season and breaking them down and comparing how they went to their pre-season expectation. This is Joel from AFL Access, and this is the 2018 review for the Carlton Blues. It's tricky to find a starting point for the Blues, so let's track back to last year and see where they ended up. At the end of 2017, they ended up with 6 wins, 16 losses, and a percentage of 78.2%. The Blues were the lowest scoring team for the year. It was a year that probably exceeded expectations, with a few shock wins over teams like GWS, Sydney, and Hawthorn. The Hawthorn match breaking a 14-game losing streak that dated all the way back to round 6, 2005. Unfortunately, most of the promise for the 2018 season went down the drain when Sam Docherty went down with an ACL injury, and Bryce Gibbs was traded to Adelaide at his request. Most were expecting a 4-8 win season for the Blue Bag. Suddenly, no one really knew what to expect from the Blues, or at the very least development from some of their younger players and new draft prospects. However, what we got was 2 wins all season, a percentage of 60, and last place by a fair margin. This is a considerable step backwards, and honestly really disappointing to many Carlton fans who thought they might see a modicum of improvement. So, why the sudden drop-off? As of writing this script prior to the final round, there are currently 10 players that have had season-ending injuries. Both Liam Jones and Zach Fisher, key components to the Blues back down with season-ending injuries in the round 18 loss to Hawthorn, and their star ruckman Matthew Cruiser is currently waiting to undergo a procedure that will hopefully reduce instances of an elevated heart rate. Alex Silvagni, who was currently battling an ankle injury, has announced his retirement as of the end of the season, unfortunately dealing another blow to the struggling Blues defense, along with other injuries to key players such as Mark Murphy, Matthew Kennedy, Jed Lamb, and others, but also affect their long-term playing health. This has really put a strain on Carlton's youth to make up for the lack of depth. Carlton have at times struggled to field a competitive team, let alone anything that looks close to their best 22. The team has instead relied on Patrick Cripps and Charlie Curnow to carry the midfield and the forward line respectively. The lack of quality depth has been severely exposed throughout this year, although that is to be expected with a team with such a high player turnover rate. It is concerning that young players like Cripps, Curnow, Fisher, McKay, Petrevski, Seaton, and Wiedering are being asked to carry such heavy loads, which can really stunt their development and potentially risk their long-term playing health. Due to the injury list and lack, Carlton has suffered losses by 50-plus points on more than 8 occasions, 2 of which were more than 100 points, and have failed to score over 100 points themselves in over 50 consecutive games. This lack of quality is affecting every lineup on the field, and believe it or not, their backline is actually their strongest point with the most healthiest list. They are still very, very fragile and very weak. The seeming regression of Jacob Wiedering and Jack Silvagni, 2 young players projected to be the key components of a developing list, has severely hurt the team's progression. It can be argued, though, that both players have played out of their natural positions, out of both need and desire to better round their game. It meant that both players have either regressed or simply not taken the next step in their development, and also no consistent game time throughout the year has been a major issue for them. Perhaps the biggest loss outside of Docherty to the Blues, which we'll get to in a moment, was the trading of Bryce Gibbs to Adelaide. After 231 games, the 2006 No. 1 draft pick requested a trade home to Adelaide for the 2nd year in a row. This meant a significant chunk of experience was lost in the midfield, and with Mark Murphy succumbing to injury week in, week out, very little coherence and experience was left in them. It was pretty much left up to Patrick Cripps to support this entire endeavour. Not only was Bryce Gibbs' experience sorely missed, so was his outside class. Carlton's skill at times have been atrocious, with an average disposal efficiency of 56.9 before even round 23. Matthew Cruiser, one of the other number 1 draft picks in the Carlton Blues side, has been sorely lacking in this season, also succumbing to injuries pretty much week in, week out. With him only playing half the season, Carlton have been dominated in the ruck frequently, and has also felt his lack of presence with mobility and goal sense, which is surprising for a ruckman to be displaying. The other injury which heavily exposed the Blues' lack of depth was having no Sam Doherty for the entire year. Doherty was to be the main avenue of drive from the defence after losing Zach Tui to Geelong, and although Kade Simpson, who has been valiant and heroic throughout his 300 games at Carlton, just doesn't have the same penetration as Doherty has. This leaves the door open for a younger player to fill his spot and provide a future option to have 2 attacking defenders in the same side once Simpson retires, but unfortunately no one has looked even likely to fill his role. It means that Carlton has really struggled on the rebound this year, with the ball spending most of the time in their defensive half. When the Blues have looked a chance to launch a counter-attack, their shocking disposal efficiency has let them down, something that Doherty would have gone a long way to remedying. But enough of the negatives, as there are many to dwell on, and I don't want to spend the entire video talking about the woes of Carlton, so let's just focus on the positive for the next couple minutes. Patrick Cripps this year has pretty much borne the brunt of all of Carlton's deficiencies in the midfield and has performed valiantly, averaging 29 disposals, 7 clearances, and 4 inside 50s per game. In a massive showing of faith, he has re-signed with Carlton for a further 2 years instead of going back home to Western Australia, or, as is tradition for the Blues, being traded to Adelaide. The developing youth in Fisher, McKay and Petrevski-Seton has been pleasing to see, and hopefully over the next couple of years they will improve. Charlie Curnow has also taken a massive leap forward, as he is just averages shy of 2 goals a game, 6 marks per game, and 14 disposals per game. He looks to hopefully be the heir apparent to Brendan Favola, minus the drunken shenanigans.
Pressure point! Pressure point! Pressure point!
If he continues progressing in this manner, he can command a huge presence in the forward line. As mentioned before, Kade Simpson has been nothing but a rock in defence all year, showing the young players what consistency looks like at over 300 games, and even now he still looks to have a couple of years left in him. Hopefully when Doherty returns, there should finally be some run out of the back line, and hopefully leading the younger generation by example. Ed Curnow has defied critics by having an excellent season, averaging 25 disposals at a 76% disposal efficiency. Once looked to replace Andrew Carrazzo as the main tagger for the Blues, Curnow has shown that he can win his own ball at the coalface and provide some class on the outside. With the number 1 draft pick all but certainly in Carlton's hands, they have an interesting choice to make. Do they draft an elite player like Walsh, Lukosius or Rankin in what has been touted as a super draft, or do they trade for Adelaide's 2 first-round picks and maybe even get a player out of the deal? The 2018 season for the Carlton Blues has been poor, but the Blues fan should stick at it. If I were to rate this season, I'd give it a 3 out of 10. How did you think the Blues went this year? And is there anything you disagree with what's been said? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to leave a like on the video, and be sure to subscribe and ring that bell to receive notifications whenever new content comes out. This has been your AFL Access.